Tragedy of the Commons is a great example of some of the things that can happen when you have a free resource that is shared by really an unlimited number of people. Different things can happen. There's no regulation, and let's say it's a public park, you could litter everywhere and destroy the public park just from littering alone. You also could overcrowd the park. Let's say there's, again, no regulation, and there's really like a horde of people constantly coming in, and eventually the park is so crowded you can't even visit the park. Another one would be destruction of habitat, right? If you went to, let's say, a national park and started destroying maybe some of the features of the national park, or parts of the mountain, etc., then it no longer could be as beautiful as it was before. Or the classic example is you have different companies that own cattle. Some ranchers will then go in and kind of compete to see who can consume the most amount of grass, because they're afraid the other one will consume grass quicker than they will. So it's kind of a race to the bottom. And then before you know it, there's no grass left and it's all been destroyed. So this is the classic case of tragedy of the commons. In fact, you can see this in certain public parks, depending on the regulations, all over the world, including the United States. The tragedy of the generative AI commons has some of those similar characteristics. So let's think first here about intellectual property theft. So a generative AI model could be trained on copyrighted works, and then the author or maybe the company involved doesn't have consent, and then that could devalue the original work and even undermine the incentive to create new content. If your property is going to be stolen, why would you create more? We also have job displacement. So in the case of generative AI, there's a risk that human creators would be no longer as desired, and this could lead to job displacement. And there's a negative externality that's associated with it. So if those people can't get work anymore, then society has to bear the burden of that job displacement. Also, quality control. So it's possible that in the case of the outputs, the work is going to even devalue the artist because it looks really poor quality, but it's actually the generative AI that's mimicking the artist, and it could lead to just overall quality control problems. We also have the lack of recognition or attribution. So a creator could really have their work stolen without compensation, and then they're not even recognized for actually creating the original work. And this can be demotivating, it could be unfair, and it could also have a significant contribution to whether that artist in the future gets work. We also have the ethical concerns themselves, or the moral rights, where an author may not want, let's say, their image associated with smoking or alcohol or some other vice, and you're not asking their permission. So it isn't a kind of a slam dunk with generative AI, where the traditional tragedy of the commons scenario is just magically not there for generative AI. They actually exist as well for this problem. And so we need to look at both the benefits, and there's some strong benefits of generative AI, like summarization or outlining or code generation, but then also look at the negative externalities. What is the impact on society, where society isn't actually getting benefited from some of these things? Like if it's a commercial model, society isn't getting that paycheck, but they have to pay the cost. And this is similar again to littering in the park, or overcrowding the park, or destroying the public park, is you have to pay the penalty for other people abusing it. So it's important to consider the tragedy of the commons when thinking about the ethics of generative AI.